Today we are working on shading objects using a pencil. Whenever we shade, we are creating value being the lightness or darkness of tones and colors. So when we're working on shading, we are working on the lightness or darkness of the object, not the color of the object. A lot of people are really tempted to think, oh, this is an apple, it's red, therefore I'm going to shade the whole thing the same shade of medium gray, when that's not really how it works in the world. Even though an object may be red or blue or white or whatever color it is, the light in the room or outdoors or wherever the object is still interacts with the surface of the object. So today we're going to work on adding value, and then you will use that in your final project for this week. So the first thing you're going to do is create a value scale. So you are going to try to make this whole box match this shade right here using your pencil. So this one will use really, really light pressure. For this value scale, I don't really care how smooth it is. We will get to the smoothness of your shading when we get down here, but for now, just try to get the right shade. Okay, so that just kind of gets me in the practice of creating multiple different shades with my pencil. So now I'm going to work on my technique of shading. So a lot of people shade like this, and that is not what you want to do. A lot of people also shade like this based on something that they were taught previously that they may have misunderstood. And this is really not what you want either, because either way you have all of these little white gaps left in there, and then it's really hard to go back and fill those in. And especially with this circle method, it gets really, really dark really, really quickly. So what you want to do is something like this. So it's sort of a blend of the two. So you're moving your pencil in sort of circular motions, but more like ovals than tiny circles. And I'm going and I'm filling in each area and just adding a little bit to the edge instead of going way out here. So I'm just very, very slowly adding in value. If I wanted this area to be a little bit darker, I could kind of go over it several times and build up the value that way. It is much, much easier to go back and darken an area than it is to go back and lighten an area. When in doubt, go a little bit too light and then you can layer on top of it. It's very, very difficult to lighten after you've already made it too dark. You also want to avoid going in lines like this. Because then when you're done, you'll get kind of a striped effect, which is not what you're going for. So I'm just kind of moving my pencil almost randomly, adding a little bit here, then adding a little bit here, so that you get something that's nice and smooth. So I have these nice blending sticks. Some people also use a paper towel or their finger. I don't really prefer that you use your finger. It tends to smudge a little bit more out of control, like it's harder to control a small area. But a lot of people think that these or their finger or a paper towel is going to save their drawing. So they'll shade like this, and then they'll go back and do like this to try to make it look smooth, or like this. And what happens is that pretty much just looks sloppy. Once you have shaded in one of these methods and you've made it look rough and scribbly, this will not fix it. If you have shaded fairly smoothly, like you can see this one is pretty smooth, then I can go back and gently blend it. And you can see how this is a little bit smoother than this. I always say that these blending sticks will add about 2% to your project. So if you were going to get a 97 with your shading, you use a blending stick, you get a 99. If you were going to get a 65 with your shading, you use a blending stick, you get a 67. It is not going to improve your shading that much. It's just going to add that last little touch to make it look nice. So like I explained earlier, your value and shading is not the color of the object. It is the way the light interacts with the surface of the object. The color does play some part in that, but it is not the only thing. So in this little example here, you see the moon is here, and then there's this hot air balloon. So the area of the hot air balloon that is closer to the light source, in this case the moon, is going to be lighter than the area that's farther away. Even though the entire balloon may be one color, the area that is closer to the light source is going to be lighter because of the way that the light is interacting with the surface of the object. When an object is shiny, like has a metallic finish of some kind, that is going to be more dramatic. When the object is more matte and less shiny, it's going to be a little bit less dramatic, the difference between the light areas and the dark areas. So on these down here, I want you to consider this little sun to be your light source, and then I want you to work on shading these objects with the areas closest to the light source being lightest and the areas farthest away from the light source being the darkest. Remember to use your nice shading and small little oval motions to make it look nice and smooth. If your blending stick starts to get too much graphite on it to the point where it's like making marks on its own, then you can get one of these little sandpaper blocks and kind of sand some of it away. And then go back and do some more blending. you can see this one, I got a little lazy and I didn't do a good job shading, so we will see how much the blending stick fixes that. Okay, so it looks a little bit better, but still not nearly as nice as this one over here where I really took my time. So keep that in mind as you're doing your shading. You will also notice that up here, I probably went a little bit too dark. Like, this is not that much different from this. So let's see if we can lighten it. So I'm gonna get my eraser, and I'm not gonna like scrub and erase it like I normally would. I'm just gonna kind of go like this, almost like I'm drawing with the eraser. And then get a clean area of my blending stick and kind of blend it back together. So still not nearly as easy as darkening an area, but it can be done if you mess up. So the last thing I'm going to go back and do on all three objects is add a cast shadow. The cast shadow is the shadow that the object casts on the ground. Now you will notice as I did that, I went outside the edge a little bit, and that is because I wanted it to have sort of a fuzzy impression. A lot of times shadows on the ground aren't necessarily like really nice crisp shadows, but have a little bit of a kind of fuzzy edge to them. Sometimes you do get really crisp shadows, it just depends on the object that you're drawing. So for both of these, I drew a shadow that was almost black, like pretty much as dark as I could get it with my pencil. And that is how we usually tend to think of shadows, as big, like black objects laying on the ground. And that is the case sometimes, especially if you have one singular light source like you do here, because this is basically receiving no light because it's being blocked by the object. However, a lot of times, especially with the drawings that you're going to be doing this week, you will have one main light source, but then you may also have like some overhead lights shining down, and that's going to make your shadow not nearly as dark as you would think that it's going to be. So you really want to compare the shadow when you see your object to the object itself to find out how light or dark it should be. So I'm going to do this one a little bit lighter. So that one is a lot lighter. And for this one, I'm going to again give it kind of a fuzzy edge. You see that fuzzy edge a lot more when you have multiple light sources that you're working from. So usually when there is a light shadow like this, it does have a fuzzy edge instead of a crisp, sharp edge. And a blending stick is a great way to get that fuzzy edge. Okay, so there you go. There is how to shade 3D objects with a pencil.